In The Refugee by K.A. Abbas, we have the theme of conflict, independence, loyalty, pride, resilience, and acceptance. Narrated in the first person by an unnamed narrator, the reader realizes after reading the story that Abbas may be exploring the theme of conflict. In the last video, we read how Manji was unwilling to accept that she wasn't safe in her neighborhood. But then came the influx of Muslim refugees from the East Punjab, embittered and incensed with hate and revenge. The situation in Pindi became increasingly dangerous for Hindu and Sikhs, and some of Maji's own Muslim neighbors came to her and pleaded with her to go away to a safe place of safety, at least for some time, as they were worried about her safety. And yet, there were some who reassured her and pledged that they would protect her life, honor, and property with their own lives. In particular, the old lady remembers the loyal devotion of a Muslim tailor, a tenant of theirs, who kept watch night and day on their home. May he live long. She always blesses him whenever mentioning him. He truly helped us and saved us like a real son. Hindus and Sikhs fled Pakistan, a country that would be Muslim controlled. Muslims in modern day India fled in the opposite direction. The legacy of that violent separation has endured, resulting in a bitter rivalry between India and Pakistan. When they partitioned, there were probably no two countries on earth as alike as India and Pakistan. But after partition was announced, the subcontinent descended quite quickly into riots and bloodshed. Bungalows and mansions were burned and looted. Women were raped, children were killed in front of their siblings. Trains carrying refugees between the two new nations arrived full of corpses. Their passengers had been killed by mobs en route. These were called blood trains. All too often they crossed the border in funeral silence, blood sweeping from under their carriage doors. But Manji was so well loved by her neighbors. They all wished her safety. Some wanted her to go away to a safe place, and others pledged safety at the cost of their own lives. Some of the refugees from the East Punjab were staying in their neighborhood. Maji was so moved by their pitiable condition that she voluntarily sent them donations of foodstuffs, clothes, blankets, and beddings, and it never occurred to her that they were Muslims, supposed to be the enemies of her people, and so she ought not to help them. Nor did she imagine that soon she too would be in a plight very similar to theirs. Margie was so full of compassion. She distributed willingly to those in need, unaware of the fact that she too would land up in the same situation soon enough. Then something happened that snapped the last thread of her faith. On the road in front of her house, a Hindu Tongawala was stabbed to death. This is how Manji described the gruesome incident and her own reaction to it. Son, it was bad enough that the Tongawala was killed. They killed him because he was a Hindu. But they did not spare even the horse. You know, a horse has neither religion nor caste, and yet they went on stabbing the poor animal with their daggers till the poor dumb creature bled to death. Then I knew the madness had gone too far, and human beings had become something else, something horrible and evil, that they would no longer feel safe in Rawalpindi. The harsh reality was unfolding in front of Manji. In front of Manji's house, a Tongawala was stabbed to death because he was a Hindu. They also went on stabbing the poor horse and killed it that had neither religion nor caste. This heinous crime made Maji take the life turning decision to pack up and move out of Rawalpindi. And so she locked up her house, leaving everything behind just as it was. She still did not imagine that she was abandoning her hearth and home forever. The prevalent madness she hoped would blow over one day, and then she would return home. But by the time we reached Delhi, she said with a sigh, my old eyes saw things, horrible things, both here and there, that told us that we could never again go to Pindi. By the time they reached Bombay, the memory of her home in Rawalpindi was only a pain in her aged heart. When she decided to leave, she did not think she wouldn't come back. But the grueling journey, bitter and bloody experiences, gangs of killers set whole villages aflame, hacking to death men and women and the aged, while carrying off young women to be raped. Some British soldiers and journalists who had witnessed the Nazi death camps claimed partition's brutalities were worse. Pregnant women had their breasts cut off and babies hacked out of their bellies. Infants were found literally roasted on spits. She knew she would never be able to come back. In Rawalpindi, she used to live in a house with six spacious rooms, wide verandas, and a big courtyard. In Bombay, she and her husband live with their son in a single room tenement, with a dhobi occupying the room on one side and a coal shop on the other. There is a small kitchen which also serves as dining room, bathroom, and storeroom. When my friend lived there alone, the room was always in a mess. Books, newspapers, dirty linen, and unwashed teacups lying about everywhere. But anyone who visits the same place now finds it completely transformed. Within its narrow limits, everything is spotlessly clean, well arranged. There are white sheets on the beds with embroidered pillowcases. The floor shines with constant scrubbing, and there is not a particle of dust or dirt anywhere. In Rawalpindi, Maji had two men servants and a maid servant. Here she cooks with her own hands, washes the dishes, sweeps the floor, but she has a maternal and pleasant smile for any person, any friend of her son who happens to drop in, and of course, she would never let anyone go away without eating something or at least taking a cup of tea. Maji has lost her hearth and home, all her life savings and possessions. From a prosperous landlady in Rawalpindi, she has become a refugee in Bombay, but her hospitality has not lost its North Indian flavor and fervor. In Rawalpindi, she had two male servants and a maid, but here she has to cook, wash, clean, and do everything herself, living in a single room. All her life savings and possessions are lost, but not her hospitality. She suffered a lot, but never cursed anyone for that. There was no anger or self pity in her silent heart against anyone. In Bombay, Maji and her husband lived in a small rented house with their son. The house was very small with a single room. That room served them as a main hall, kitchen, bathroom, and also as storeroom. At Rawalpindi, she had few servants to do her household works, but now she does all sorts of work in that house. At Bombay, she keeps her house very neat and clean. Maji has a fair complexion, a rather short stature, and frail body. Her hair, which was already grey, has turned almost completely white since after the partition, and her health is not so good. She gets attacks of asthma and neuralgia, but she never sits idle for a moment, never relaxes or sleeps except for about 6 hours at night. First to get up in the morning, last to go to sleep. Throughout the day, she is constantly working, whether it is cooking for her son, or darning and mending her husband's old clothes, or making tea or lassi for a guest. She insists on doing everything with her own hands. Seeing her, you would never imagine that she is a refugee who has lost and suffered so much. She never proclaims her tragedy. She never curses or abuses those who made her leave her home. She still remembers her Muslim neighbors with affection and brightens up whenever her husband reads out a letter received from Rawalpindi. Only very occasionally a soft cold sigh escapes her lips as she says, "Your Bombay may be a great and grand city, son, but we can never forget our Rawalpindi. Those pears and apricots and apples, those grapes and melons and baggu goshas that you never get in Bombay." Maji has gracefully accepted the reality and lives in the present moment. She has no bitterness for anyone, which is a saintly quality. Occasionally, she sends letters to her Muslim neighbors at Rawalpindi. They also send letters to Maji. On reading them, she is moved to tears. She never hates any of her Muslim neighbors. Even there were communal hostility between Hindus and Muslims. The old memories were very sweet to her, and she wept on the past happy incidents with them. Having spent most of her life in Rawalpindi with beautiful surroundings and wonderful neighbors, she misses the luscious fruits she enjoyed there. And suddenly she is silent, tears bubbling up in her heart, tired old eyes. And it seems that in the intensely human heart of this refugee, Mother India, there is neither anger nor hatred, neither rancor nor self pity, but only memories. Memories that are soft like ripe apricots and fragrant like pagoshas. K.A. Abbas has portrayed the scenario of communal riots and an old woman affected by it. Maji is an epitome of motherhood and a good natured woman. Her Muslim neighbors are also good in nature, but the dirty politics and inefficient governments had made an irreparable gap between their lives. K.A. Abbas has given a very faithful and realistic account of India Pakistan partition in 1947, a macabre historical event through the life of Manji, a refugee.